Hello, humans. How are you? How are you feeling? However you are feeling in this now is absolutely perfect, needed, and necessary. The best way that I know to be able to maintain my belonging and to stay embodied is absolute authenticity. That's how I've conducted myself since childhood, and particularly within the last few years with sharing myself publicly, and the channeling and all that I do is based upon as much as I can possibly manage and muster absolute authenticity. And it's interesting to be an artist and to also feel that need to be authentic. In acting school, they often molded us to get into this space of full receptivity, the ability to fully, authentically respond. So then in that sense, it's never a performance. But it's always an interesting balance and tightrope to walk and maintain. That being said, a few weeks ago, my teacher, friend, and mentor, Keoni Hanale, it was probably closer to a few months ago, started sharing ideas around the connection to what is an oracle and what we have in our modern era pathologized as schizophrenia. And in all honesty, I never made the connection. I never really thought much about it. And the more that he started sharing, the more than that I started doing my own research on the symptoms of what we call in our modern era schizophrenia. And I realized, oh, wow. I have yet to be clinically diagnosed. I have not technically seen a specialist. I have talked with a friend of mine who is a certified psychologist, and we both have come to the affirmation in our own ways of being that most likely I would be diagnosed with schizophrenia. This is a relatively modern condition, as we call it, or mental illness or disease. And I will just share from my direct experience first, again, maintaining this space of absolute authenticity. It was on the morning of Yom Kippur, just recently, about a week ago. The rain woke me up at about 3 a.m. It was our first good rain of the fall-autumn season. And I heard the messages and the ua and the rain. I awakened. And I felt, oddly enough, look at Instagram. Check Instagram. Check Brother Keoni's stories right now. And so I did. And he had ushered an invitation for anyone who would like to, that felt themselves as their own authority, to host and lead a ceremony on the theme and topic of oracles and schizophrenia. And I felt in this moment so strongly, and I also audibly heard, this is yours. This can be yours. And I went, okay, sign me up. And just like opening a vault, all of this information started to stream through of how I would organize it, how I would share the themes, and also a very deep ownership and recognition, even though it had already been swirling in my mind for a few weeks, in my heart and my body and my being, this very deep ownership that, in our modern clinical psychology realms, I can say with pretty strong conviction, I would most likely be diagnosed with schizophrenia. And so I made kind of like a press release to Keone, like, hey, here's what I would do. And it took me a couple hours, and I sent it to him by about 5 a.m, so he had it when he woke up. And he very gratefully and excitedly received my idea, and we decided, okay, let's go ahead with it. Let's do it. And honestly, it's been quite a lot for me to organize, and allowing myself first and foremost to receive the initiations of the ever constant ceremony that is occurring for oneself when one decides to step up and to show up into this type of authority. There are many different layers of deep internal initiation. And first and foremost, that's what it's always about for me. Of course, I want people to come to receive. I want to connect with the community. But first and foremost, it's for me. It's for what this experience can continue to allow to bring up and to refine and integrate within me. I've never spoken a lot about some of the challenges that I dance through and with. I have in my own ways, but never to this extent, because it was never relevant and I didn't have context. It wasn't relevant, I don't think, up until a few months ago. I'm thinking perhaps there were moments where I was questioning, like, I'd probably be pathologized as something, whether it would be with different levels of depression or bipolar, or I think we call it manic depressive. No, I don't know what we're supposed, or what's the other one? Oh, it's fine. Oops. But I've heard voices since I was a little girl. And I think there's lots of us within the spiritual community that do hear voices and do experience what psychology might refer to as quote unquote hallucinations. It's very interesting to note, though, all of the common symptoms of schizophrenia and kind of like checking it off, going, yep. I heard voices since I was a child, and first and foremost, it was the voice and the guidance and being and the apparition of Yeshua, as well as my ancestors and elemental spirits. But it wasn't until my late teens, early 20s, and then into my mid and late 20s that I really flipped the switch, we might say, into experiencing different levels of what we might truly identify as psychosis, different levels of emotional mood swings, exploring different levels of conspirituality, also created many different forms of psychosis, and switching my mind frame from being so focused in musical theater, coming home and beginning this spiritual exploration, first starting with Buddhist meditation, and then the activation of beginning to hear and receive the messages from extraterrestrials, and beginning this whole seeking of unveiling and revealing the innate truths of reality. It's very interesting to note that these attributes go right along side and side with, again, what we have pathologized as schizophrenia. I do believe that what I am connecting to in terms of the extra dimensionals and my guides and Yeshua, it's very real, these connections. I firmly believe that. And also, I have taken it upon myself to be one of the voices that is sharing some of the ways that we can perhaps redefine the stigma and of schizophrenia in particular, and to also widen the scope and bring into the conversation of mental illness, quote unquote, in general, and how primarily it is, as I'm seeing and feeling it, a result of our separation from our spiritual natures, from our bodies, from nature, the land itself, and primarily the separation and the banishing and shaming in our societies of the energetic feminine. In many societies, in indigenous societies, these attributes that, again, we have labeled as schizophrenia, these conditions are seen and recognized in the tribal community, and it is known and seen that someone is to be a channel, is to be an oracle. And a lot of the times, it is what might look like a more modern psychological breakdown, a psychosis. The individual starts hearing voices, they start going into spaces of overwhelm, spaces of what is known as thought broadcasting, extreme anxiety, emotional swings. But the main idea here is that within these tribal societies, there is context. There's context as to what is happening, and there are individuals in place within the societies to be able to help aid and steward that person into different forms of initiation. In most Western cultures, simply enough, we don't have that context. I want to draw in the ideas and correlations as well with the suppression and the banishment and the shaming of the energetic feminine. How I define the energetic feminine and how Bella and Yeshua and my ancestors and guides have guided me to identify with this aspect of our being for years is the primordial void. The space of the cosmic quantum scope where all possibilities are, the space of absolute oneness that is resting on the head of a pinpoint, all here in this one moment. I was also receiving for quite some time before coming into convergence with Keoni Hanale and the lineage of Mu, that this space of the cosmic quantum scope and domain is the space of absolute belonging, correlating to the hybrids laws of creation, that the one is the all and the all are the one, that everything is here and now. The space of the energetic feminine knows these laws as an absolute foundation of her being. And within that innate belonging then comes the ability to be fully autonomous, to have sovereignty, to self-govern one's self, because one is a fractal of spirit, of the divine itself. There is no need for any form of intermediary. And then therefore, within that space of knowing the absolute fractal of self as source, there then is by proxy innate safety. Now, it's no surprise that in many different ways we have condemned and banished and pushed out this energetic feminine from the Godhead. This is primarily a result of Abrahamic religions. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about and sharing in ceremony, and most likely moving forward in all ways that I conduct myself, is going to be relatively controversial. But that's okay. That's kind of fun, right? So we are all well aware in many ways of this banishing of the energetic feminine that I believe, in my surmising of looking at history, occurred around the time of the creation of Abrahamic religions. That could be a whole nother talk that one day I'll circle back to. But in many different ways, we began to deepen into the experience of the separation from this primordial aspect of source that holds within her its being absolute belonging. Again, it's that quantum scope that knows the fractal as self within self of source itself. And in many different ways, that then continues the cycling of different forms of schisms and shatterings within our own being. Now, at the fully pulled back scope of our higher selves, we signed up for this experience of the illusion of separation. In many ways, I feel we signed up to forget the mother so that we could return to that aspect. It also must be shared, I feel, as well, just to state that we are, as humans, 100% masculine and 100% feminine energy. These are just essentially labels, terms, to be able to put words to these primordial forces of source. So in many ways in our modern societies, we have seen a banishing, a shaming, an ostracizing of things connected to, experiences connected to the energetic feminine. And I fully believe in my own being that our modern pathology of schizophrenia in particular, and also other mental illnesses, are a reflection, a byproduct of this foundational shaming and banishing of the energetic feminine in our societies. And in other indigenous societies, this simply enough is not the case. I want to share too that this idea of me taking ownership in a way that, I would most likely be pathologized as having schizophrenia, is not all sunshine and rainbows, and I'm not making light of this condition at all, because this is something that I never honestly really thought to even share, because I suppose a part of me really thought like, everyone literally hears thoughts, hears other voices speaking to them. Trigger warning, this might be rather triggering for some people, but I have literally heard things that, again, I've done a little bit of research the past couple of weeks to go, interesting, these are the common things that people literally audibly hear that is being related to aspects of the hallucinations, aspects of psychosis. And I've heard these things my entire life, but very strongly since my late teens, things such as, you're worthless, you should kill yourself, that person hears you, they know what you're thinking, they don't like you, why do you exist, you're not worthy to be here, I'm gonna kill you in your sleep. Like really, really dark things, really dark things. Sometimes I've also heard, this has been a recurring experience, is just screaming of children, of people, just this absolute depths of despair, like being burned, screaming. And over the years, I've gotten really good at just focusing. Honor must be given to my family, to all of my teachers, to all of my friends, to the way that I organized from a higher perspective my life, or the way that the universe organized things and that I continue to show up for. I really do believe that I have been a perfect storm so as to be able to withstand and function while being an oracle, being a channel, or being someone that we might pathologize as having schizophrenia. I stayed in my body. Because of theater, I was able to move and express emotions through my body. I was able to complete what is known as the stress circuit, to be able to not necessarily relieve the stressors, but to be able to cope and relieve the stress in my body by expressing, moving, creating. And I was held in a space of community as well. Once all of this really started coming on for me in my early to mid 20s, I was met with a mentor. I met Daryl Anka, the channel of Bashar, and he told me, this is happening to you too. And if you need anything, you can call me. So I was immediately put in these very ancient practices of having a community. And then from there, it's always been, point in case, right now, it's always been my mode of operation to share, to be as authentic as I can in the sharing, and to allow myself to wield the expression of stress and to just get more comfortable at being uncomfortable so as to get it out. And then, of course, once I started publicly sharing the channeling, there were many people that were excited to connect with me and to receive the information. And so there is this synaptic experience of reflection, of not being condemned, but being appreciated and valued for one's gift. But I've been looking back very deeply on my life and having such appreciation for Yeshua and aspects of the Essenes and the Magdalens and my ancestors and the voice of Mother Earth herself and Bella. Throughout the years, I've learned to listen to those voices while still always hearing all of the other ones. But shifting my focus to those voices and taking action from those places. Around my mid-20s as well, I was starting to truly enter into different levels of psychosis, diving into different aspects of grand conspiracy. I was integrating with the channeling, with all of the aspects of multidimensional reality that I was remembering. And then the voice, the invitation from Hawaii called me. It was in dreams, and again, it was also moments of audible messages. And this initiation and introduction to the Hawaiian principles is one of the many things that I really do think saved my life. Saved my consciousness, allowed me to continue to maintain being embodied and to function. Within the Hawaiian communities, I was seen and recognized as a channel by the kupuna, mahalo kupuna o ka'u. And encouraged, again, to be expressive and to explore and to learn. And through my journeys and then meeting different Hawaiian friends, and within the last few years coming into friendship and mentorship with, again, Keone Hanalei, realizing that the messages that Bella has been sharing for years is part and parcel, right in alignment with Hawaiian perspectives, and the hybrid perspectives are one and the same. And the foundation of it, as I translate it within my being, is this invitation and this necessary restoration, resurrection, and return to the energetic feminine. It is from that space, the establishment, the remembering of our innate belonging, the fractal in and with and as ourselves, that we are able to fully reorientate and come into that space of the ability to truly channel. This is kind of controversial as well. And this is getting a little long-winded, but that's okay. This is another thing that I've really realized and learned. And I mean no shame or condemnation to any particular channels. This is something, again, it's so deeply systemic within our society that simply enough, we just do not have context for these types of conversations. We don't have context of the absolute necessity to be established in the energetic feminine. And so a lot of what we're seeing in our new age spiritualities and a lot of the channeling is not embodied. It's still being, we might say, perpetuated from different aspects of the mind, from my perspective. And again, this is no one in particular. It's just something that I have been led through these initiations, this absolute sacred invitation to land in the oracle, the primordial oracle, the primordial channel that is the energetic feminine, that is the body. And without that context, we're kind of floating in no man's land. And it can be very easy for different aspects of the channel's personality to weave themselves into the messages. And simply enough, things continue to be very ironic and very overcomplicated. Again, it's kind of controversial. And in many ways, I feel like that's why I have not been invited to most of these channel panels. People don't really, yeah. I'm very aware of thought broadcasting, which is this idea that, again, is very common within experiences of schizophrenia. thinking and feeling that people can feel your thoughts, that people don't like you. Again, these ideas of the voices that people hear as well are so often connected to this idea of unworthiness and not belonging. And from my direct experience, I think in many different ways, this is connected to the primordial foundational aspect, the symbol of the energetic feminine in our societies being removed. The space of the ability to channel, to see the quantum scope, is connected to the energetic feminine. And the energetic feminine is having an experience in our society of being banished, of not belonging, of being ostracized, killed, outcast, shamed. So it makes sense to me. It makes perfect sense that as someone is experiencing a form of heightened connectivity, that the voltage of that primordial womb, that primordial origin point, that voltage is going to be translated in ways that are of highlighting the schism of the illusion of not belonging. And so again, without this having conversation, without there being context around the absolute need to land in the energetic feminine, whether we are experiencing forms of schizophrenia, whether we are experiencing forms of what it means to be a channel, if we're not landed in that energetic feminine, in the body, we're going to experience schisms of the translation. I also want to share as well that in modern science, they don't have a understanding of where and why and how what schizophrenia even is. In different circles, there's many different talks in different spiritual circles or indigenous circles. There's many different talks about this idea of being an oracle, experiencing, again, what we call schizophrenia, is a very biological experience. That there are many different things occurring harmonally in the brain and body. Always full disclosure, full authenticity. My channel and myself as a being has never really functioned primarily from science and facts and very discernible data. The way that I operate is in very wide scopes, very archetypal, symbolic energy. And so this is something that I'm still very much exploring, and a theme that I invite people that are interested to attend the ceremony on November 17th, the resurrection of the oracle, redefining the stigma of schizophrenia. I invite different voices and people that maybe have different perspectives or have different clues for the community, for the Yahyel that shines brightly together, for the La Hui of us. When we hui, when we come together in a circle, we need others to contribute their perspectives, their knowledge. This is a sharing, though, for me to update people and to give perhaps new people a chance to hear my voice, to feel my vibration in different ways. I do feel that this is perhaps a little scattered, but that's okay. That's okay. It's, again, a ceremony within a ceremony, an initiation within an initiation for me. And it's very healing and perhaps potentially healing for other people. But in this beautiful, ironic way, it's been so healing for me to have an acceptance of this. Go, oh, I would most likely And my friend who's a clinical psychologist, she is agreed, and then other friends as well. They're like, yeah, I didn't want to say anything, and they want to like freak. No, yeah, thank you for my allowing my time and process. But it's been so healing for me to be able to come into this realization that, oh, I would most likely in our modern era be pathologized with schizophrenia, and to be able to share as an example for people and individuals on all sides of the spectrum, people that are perhaps coming more so from an indigenous perspective, people that are coming from a new age perspective, people that are coming from a more mainstream psychology perspective. It's so healing for me to expose myself in this way and to see what type of reflection of wholeness may be continued to be offered for others. One of the main common symptoms as well for people experiencing schizophrenia is a focus on religious or spiritual ideas. Yeshua, the being we know as Jesus, is the first apparition that I ever saw, the first voices I ever heard were of Yeshua. And this gets into perhaps what I shall make another video, and what we are going to be getting into in the actual ceremony itself, is this idea that the stewarding of the energetic feminine can be traced and tracked through one lineage. And again, it's controversial, but I firmly believe in my own being that we can start the origin point of this lineage with Mu, the land of Mu, what some people maybe know as Lemuria. It's a very real thing. The land of Mu is where we could start this lineage. And then it moves into different aspects of ancient Egypt and the Isis lineages, different aspects of the oracles of Delphi, and then also into the Essenes and the Magdalene lineages that created the community and safe space for Yeshua to be who he was to be. A little controversial. But again, I'm going to be sharing more about this in this ceremony, and will be continuing to share as I continue to integrate as well. So thank you for receiving these messages. Thank you for receiving my authentic heart and now in this now of our being. Ka e ka tuie a me a it on para tu a mea ama ama kuhi heva ama et ama. To be entangled in that which is unnatural. Now I rise, exposed and brilliant. Finally. Thank you for being you. Receive the now, here moment to thank you for being you. Have a be you to the fullest now. Aloha.